Hello and welcome to another episode of the PropSwap podcast. We are your hosts, Ian Epstein.
And Luke Pergande.
And we are also the founders of PropSwap, the first marketplace to buy and sell sports bets. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We've got another great episode for you. We'll, of course, touch on some NFL, but first and foremost, got to talk baseball playoffs. The World Series is set, and just like everyone expected, it is the Texas Rangers versus the Arizona Diamondbacks. Of course, everyone thought that both those teams would go on the road and win two must-win games, 6 and 7, both of them. But let's start on the NL side. The Diamondbacks going to the World Series. They were 100-1 as late as September to win the World Series. Of course, as we've talked about, they got that last wild card spot that probably could have gone to the Cubs, and got some interesting sales to talk about. So last week, we talked about this $50 three-leg parlay that included two winners, and then the third leg was Diamondbacks to win the World Series that had 90-1 odds on it. It sold for $175 in June, resold for $100 in August, of course, because they were looking like they may miss the playoffs. And then after Arizona tied up the series 2-2 in the NLCS, this ticket had a market value of $2,000. So the person who bought the ticket for $100 in August could have sold it for $2,000 when it was tied 2-2. I wrote that down obviously because Phillies then took the lead 3-2. The value plummeted, and so I wouldn't say plummeted, but the customer did not sell when it was worth $2,000, but he did sell after Phillies won Game 5. So Phillies have a 3-2 lead going back to Philadelphia, and then that's when this customer decided to sell. And I remember we were talking last week about will he or won't he? So he did, but he may or may not have left some money on the table. He sold the ticket for $725. So, still a nice profit there. He turned $100 purchase into $725. And then if the ticket wins, it will collect $11,875. The current market value of that ticket is now $4,950. So, will be interesting to see if that person will flip it again. But, what would, in that situation, given the fact that Diamondbacks went down 2-0, tied it up 2-2, lost Game 5. I mean, what would you suggest sellers do in just like kind of a back and forth series like this?
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to go to Game 4 in Phoenix. I mean, whether you're attending the game in person or not, to me, the Phillies were the far superior team. Just it seemed like their offense was just more lively than the D-backs bats were. Pitching and probably have a pitching edge too. I thought the Phillies did going into the series. So I honestly, if I was holding on to that ticket, I would have sold multiple times throughout the series. Probably most notably, after you kind of stole one in Game 4 in Phoenix. They came back after the Phillies just exploded in like the 5th inning, and then D-backs had a crazy 8th inning. So to me, after that point, and it's they go on to win Game 5, and that's when he sells the ticket. Like I probably would have sold after Game 4. Again, we're 2020, hindsight's 2020 here, but yeah, there were multiple exit opportunities for me. I just think Philly's a better team.
Yeah. And for the record, I did not think in any way that I thought Philly for sure was going to win Game 6 and/or for sure going to win Game 7. I mean, I saw him as high as some books had him as high as -900 to win the series when it was 3-2. So I do not fault this customer. I do not fault the seller for like saying to himself, "Look, they're down 3-2. I can make still a good chunk of change on this ticket." I think almost everyone except maybe the diehard fans were expecting we're expecting Phillies to win one of those two games, 6 or 7. On the flip side, though, we had a customer who purchased a Phillies World Series ticket on PropSwap in late August for $55 with a collect amount of $1,265. After the Phillies won Game 5, this customer resold his ticket for $575. So on the flip side, we had another customer who got in for 55, and then when it was 3-2 and the entire world was on the Phillies to win that series, he sold it for 50. He sold it for 575. So that's a great.
He's smarter than I am.
Yeah. And so those were odds of plus 120 for the buyer. So just to give you some idea as to where the Phillies stood in the World Series rankings there for a moment, right? I mean, especially after Texas won, after Texas won Game 6, the Phillies were the favorite there for a little bit. So great, $500 profit off a $55 purchase, and now that ticket is garbage. So tons of activity, and then just obviously, as I've mentioned, we've got a ton of big D-backs tickets in our system. I mean, we got one ticket that's I posted on Twitter, $100 at 100-to-1 odds. That has a market value of $4,200, and then there's another giant one that the customer bet $350 at 80-to-1 odds. So collect amount of a little over 28 G's. We'll see if that gets posted for sale. But tons of activity, and that's just on the NL side. Let's move over to the American League side. The Rangers Astros series, the second postseason series ever where the road team won all 7 games. The last time and the only other time that happened.
All 4?
No, the road team won all 7 games.
I follow. Yeah. Wow.
It's the second postseason series, So
that's
the
crazy.
road team won all 7 games. The only other time that happened also involved the Astros. It was the Astros Nationals World Series in 2019. So kind of ironic that it's happened twice in the history of baseball, and the Astros were involved in both and lost both.
Yeah, little nuance because they're playing in the same state. It doesn't happen too often. But yeah, it's been, the Astros were complaining. I heard on like A-Rod and Jeter were talking about the Astros were complaining how they're not seeing the ball well in their own stadium. It's like, okay, like that sounds like a you problem. Like, we're sorry to hear that, but yeah, I don't. And after they've been to 7 straight ALCSs, like why is the 7th one the time we're going to start complaining about being unable to see the ball well, and the Rangers have to deal with the exact same thing? Like, what's the difference?
Right. And the last team that should be complaining about having a disadvantage in Houston or at home should be that team. We won't get into that scandal. And then the Rangers lost 102 games in 2021. They were the 5th team ever to reach the World Series within 2 years of losing 100 games. And now there's a 6th team to add to that list, the Arizona Diamondbacks. So again, wild that we're going to have 2 teams playing each other that 2 years ago lost 100-plus games.
Just added to the PropSwap Hall of Fame of these teams being triple digits and getting to the championship. Just tack another one on.
As I'm thinking out loud, we've talked about on this podcast, there was just a string of teams that were triple digits, made it to the championship and then lost. But now that's not going to happen because we're guaranteed. I guess the Rangers never really were triple digits, but we're guaranteed to get a team here that was a long shot. So
yeah, I think you could have found the Rangers at 100-to-1. I think at some point in time you could have found them at 100. Not saying a ton of tickets are printed at that number, but
yeah, if anyone out there has a triple digit Rangers ticket, tweet at us or even better yet, list it for sale. I have not seen the highest I think I've seen on a ticket for the Rangers is 50-to-1.
Okay.
But regardless, still a long shot, and now we can't even say, a long shot's going to get to the championship and lose because they're both long shots. So
Yeah, someone's winning.
Yeah, someone's winning. But yeah, to your point, yet again, another long shot is going to at least reach the finals. Here are a couple interesting sales. Rangers. They're back in May. A customer bet $122 at 40-1 on the Rangers to win the World Series. In early August, that customer sold it on PropSwap for $500. So turned a $122 bet into $500. With the Rangers up 2-0 in the ALCS, the customer who bought it for $500 resold it for $22.50. And then when the Rangers then lost 3 in a row, the value dropped to $588. Again, just another topsy-turvy thing. I don't believe the person who paid $22.50 for it has relisted or resold it yet. But again, nice flip for the guy who paid $500 and then flipped it for $22.50. And now the guy who paid $22.50 can win about $2,700 profit if the Rangers go on to win. And then another Rangers ticket, very similar to the story we talked about last week with the Dodgers, customer who bet the Dodgers before the D-back series. They lost game 1. He sold it for a loss, and then the Dodgers ended up obviously losing that series. Similar story, although different result. We had a customer when the Rangers were up 2-0. A customer bet $3,000 on Texas to win the ALCS, to win $750, and then prior to Game 7, the customer sold it on PropSwap for $1,750. Obviously he took a $2,000 loss on that, and then it ended up winning. And so the buyer got odds of plus 114 compared to the Rangers were like plus 105 or plus 110 at sportsbooks heading into Game 7. So the buyer there made a nice $2,000 profit. The seller lost. What would that be? $1,250. The seller lost, and the buyer made $2,000 on that ticket. So, any takeaways or thoughts from that ALCS?
I thought they were way more live than the D-backs. I thought the Rangers were way more of a live dog than the D-backs were. So, that's a little. I probably wouldn't have sold it going into Game 7. Like, I was like, this team, certainly after winning Game 6, like this Adolis Garcia guy is just playing out of his brain. Like, this guy was cut basically from the Cardinals. They traded him they put him in Double-A, and then they traded him for cash, which basically means you're a scrub. And he's gotten that huge he hit the home run in Game 4, and Dusty Baker goes nuts because they pegged him, and the pitcher gets thrown out. It's the whole story back and forth with Adolis, but this guy is just playing out of his mind. Of course, wins ALCS MVP. So I just feel like when a guy in your team is that hot, and of course Corey Seager and other guys need to help him, but when a guy is that hot, just don't bet against that. The Astros just looked like, from a aesthetics perspective, they just looked like the worst team. And of course the Rangers went up 2-0 to start the series. So when the Rangers are hot like that, to me, I wouldn't have sold that bet.
Yeah. I mean, look, and again, hindsight 2020, but there was a clip after that Game 4 you're talking about, where the catcher Martin Maldonado, who Adolis Garcia was getting into with him, he goes the worst thing he could have done was wake up the Astros, and then since then, Garcia went on to hit 5 or 6 home runs and just absolutely crushed the Astros. The reason why I kind of liked the Astros in Game 7 was because of the starters. So Christian Javier, I don't have the stat right in front of me, but I mean, he had through 4 starts, he had the lowest opponent batting average in the history of postseason ever. And so, I kind of thought that, he would carry the team. Christian Javier's box score line from Game 7: a third of an inning, 4 hits, 3 earned runs, and give up a home run. So,
Crazy.
I did not handicap that one well, but that's that start. Javier was why I liked the Astros in Game 7, and but yeah, to your point, the Astros, the Rangers were just super hot, and clearly Garcia used all of that anger towards the Houston pitchers. So
we talk about this all the time. We talked about it with the Heat last year and the Golden Knights and the Panthers. Like, getting hot is just weird phenomenon that happens in the postseason, and it's really tough to explain. But confidence increases, accuracy increases for pitchers. You're just seeing the ball better and watching it hit off your bat, in the baseball example, and it just adds such a layer to sports betting. Like, you can dice up the box score and like the talent on each side of the baseball team, but when teams get hot, it just like defies all logic. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, but the crazy thing though is that you'd think if you lose 3 straight games at home, like, in a lot of cases I've seen where that just completely deflates the team. And so, props to the Rangers for not letting that get to them and bouncing back. But you want to talk about getting hot or being cold. You'd think losing 3 straight at home would kill any sort of momentum you have. But there you have it. That's
Bruce Bochy, one of the best managers of all time. Just put him right in the Hall of Fame.
This is his 3rd team he's going to brought to the World Series. It's incredible. So matchup is set. Diamondbacks versus Rangers. We will get to our picks for who's going to win, who we think's going to win in stake or swap. But before we do that, I thought we'd talk a little NFL Week 7 recap. Just some of the stuff I've written down. The Dolphins, such an incredibly fun team to watch. They light up a bunch of these teams he played. However, when yet again, now this is the second time where they have lost to what I would consider to be a good team, right? A solid team, right? So first it was the Bills, now it's the Eagles. Now, granted, both of those losses were on the road, but is the fact that the Dolphins, is this going to be a team where they beat up on the bad teams but can't really hang with the good teams?
I mean, everyone knows in this podcast, I've kind of adopted the Eagles, so I'm a little bit biased here, but like, to me, that team has always been the best team in the NFL. I have arguments about them versus the Niners in a bunch of different betting group chats I'm in. So like, I'm not ready to hop off the Dolphins. They just ran into a wagon, and when you have the Eagles are just loaded everywhere. And I would actually say my takeaway, I knew that the Eagles offense was really good, but like, their defense really played well against the Dolphins. Like, they shut down a Tyreek Hill to a connection, and the first drive of the game, like, they didn't do anything. Like, Tyreek Hill did whatever he wanted to, and I think even the second drive too. And then after that Eagles secondary just really shut Tyreek Hill down, which is an almost impossible task. I think Tarico or someone said on the broadcast, like, when the Patriots were trying to emulate Tyreek Hill, they put Tyreek Hill 4 yards past the line of scrimmage to simulate how fast he is, because he just gets that much, can get behind you so quickly, and it's a really difficult thing to do. So to me, no, I still think the Dolphins are for real. They just ran into the best team in the league.
Yeah, the that Georgia defense is pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
And then another note on the Eagles: the Eagles were once again 4 for 4 on this Tush Push play on Sunday night. Since last season, they are now 41 for 44 on sneaks when needing 1 yard for a first down. The next closest teams over that span are the Bills and the Bears with 11 conversions. So 30 less than the Eagles since the start of last season. We all know that you're close to Gabe, who's the trainer for Lane Johnson and close with Lane Johnson. I'm curious if you've spoken to Gabe about this Tush Push thing, because I mean, it's I love the fact that other teams are trying to run it, but they can't. And B, I do think it's gonna be one of those things where it's all fun and games until someone gets hurt. And I think players may have gotten hurt on another team, the Giants maybe. But are there any thoughts coming out of the O-line room on this play?
I mean, there's the famous quote of Sirianni after the game where he's like, "If everybody could do it, then everybody would do it." Like that's Sirianni's response. And look, like it's certainly Lane's response. Like if you're on the O-line, we've talked about the Eagles O-line at length. Like when you're that talented, yeah, you can do plays like that, and it's unstoppable because everyone's an absolute monster. And like you have 2 Hall of Famers. Jordan Mailata is the largest. Jordan Mailata is the left tackle. Jordan Mailata is the largest human being in the NFL. He's 6'8", like 375. So when you have him plus Kelsey plus Lane Johnson, like, yeah, I would say an offensive line versus a defensive line play, like it's probably going to come up Eagles. But I think there is some internal understanding that this will probably be the last season that they're able to call this play. But I'm not worried about the injury risk. There's so many more dangerous plays in the NFL.
Yeah. You're saying like with a rule change, you think the NFL is going to put a rule change in?
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of there was a period of time where Brady and the Patriots would like on the goal line, they would run the sneak where he would like he would stick his hands up across the goal line to break the plane. Still, they haven't changed the rules about that, but I think defense has caught on and like they started like looking for that and then like trying to bat the ball out of their hands, and because other players have tried to do that and failed miserably. So it kind of reminds me of that. And as there's a saying, defensive coordinators get paid money too, right? So like I'm sure even if there isn't a rule change, D coordinators will be spending the summer trying to figure out ways to stop this. So I do think that's probably a smart thing for the Eagles to realize that this does have a shelf life.
Yeah. I mean, it's literally 1st and 9 every time. Like you're gaining a yard because you know that you can convert that 4th down every time. It's like you're starting every set of downs on a shorter conversion. So but again, to me, like other teams are trying this. Why are we going to punish the Eagles just because they're really good at it? Like other teams are trying to do this quarterback sneak and they just don't have the A offensive line or B a quarterback that can squat 600. I've asked Gabe about the whole 600-pound squat thing. Like that's actually BS. Like he doesn't squat 600 pounds, but he's a monster and doesn't leave the gym and like doesn't party. And he is so business focused. Apparently him and AJ, I don't know if you watched the post game, him and AJ Brown were talking about the salmon that AJ Brown eats out of Jalen Hurts' fridge. Jalen wants like shrimp and like all a bunch of different fish, and AJ Brown only will eat salmon. But I think when you have a quarterback that's that big and that strong, plus a really talented offensive line, like I don't think it's an unfair play.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's just Jalen squats more than every other quarterback.
Yeah.
And then moving on, we talk about the Bears when they lose, so I thought we got to talk about the Bears when they won. I was telling everyone last week that would listen, I was like, this line stinks to me, meaning like the Raiders were a 3-point favorite during the week, and then it went down to 2 on Sunday. And, to me, that was one of those trap lines where it's like they are begging you to take the Raiders, right? I mean, listen, I know Brian Hoyer isn't, he's probably a below 500 starting quarterback, but he started games before, and you've still got skilled players. It's not like Devontae Adams is hurt.
Yeah, ironically, he has the most 300-yard passing games for the Bears. Brian Hoyer does.
Yeah, right. 1, right? Or something like
that's below 5.
Yeah. And it was just one of those things where it's like the sports books I felt like were begging you to take the Raiders, and we call that like a rat line, right? They'd want you to take the cheese with the Raiders. And yeah, I mean, not only did the Bears win, but they won convincingly. And I think we're up the entire game. I watched like the first half because then I had to go to we'll get to what I did in the afternoon, but Raiders missed a field goal, and then that would have taken a 3-0 lead, but then
total domination, and like the Raiders. I'm not saying the Packers are for real. I might be wrong. The Packers. I thought they'd be better. I thought they are better than they actually are. But look, they just beat the Packers last week. the Raiders did. So like this isn't a joke of a team. I know the Bears are playing them with Brian Hoyer, which is different than I think it was Jimmy G. Maybe it was Aiden O'Connell, but they beat the Packers. And like this team's not terrible. I know they're not good, but like they're not terrible, the Raiders. So the Bears put it on them. This Tyson Bagent kid is solid. Like a Division II player coming into to your first start in history and beating a team by that margin. Like he's talented. He has some stones.
Yeah, so one of the big takeaways from that Bears loss the week earlier was like just the play of the O-line, but specifically the center, like Whitehair, like had the yips, like could not hike it. I saw a video where he's blocking his own guy. But so are we thinking just the offensive line got their act together, or is there kind of a QB controversy in Chicago where it's like actually like Bagent could be better?
I don't think there's a QB controversy. Comparing the athleticism of each of those two guys is not reasonable. Like Justin Fields is way more athletic. But look, like fast forwarding, if the Bears have the number 1 pick and like they're taking Caleb Williams for sure, in my opinion. So like how much time do you give Fields to turn into the guy everyone thought he was going to be? Like, and to me, 3 seasons is enough. And certainly if you get offered Caleb Williams, you take it. But no, I don't think there's a quarterback controversy, but it does prove that like, maybe this is more on Justin Fields than we thought, right? Like It's not necessarily the O-line and the defense, all these other excuses we make for him. Like maybe it's more on Fields than we initially thought. The Raiders beat the Patriots last week, and then the Packers before that. Like they're not. This isn't that bad of a team. Again, different quarterback situations, but like the Bears put it on them.
Yeah. Well, and also the defense. I think the Bears defense had a lot to do with that.
Tremaine Edmonds is an absolute beast. I was at the Blackhawks game tonight. He was there. He must be 6'5", like 260, and can run and can cover sideline to sideline. Like he's so good. He's such a good linebacker. And TJ Edwards, not to be confused with Tremaine Edmonds from the Eagles, who's now on the Bears, also has been playing super well this year. So like the defense is really not that bad. They've done well the last month.
Yeah. Well, Bears are a 9-point underdog on Monday night against the Chargers. So again, I think that just that whole line and result just I think was more so just about how bad the Raiders were versus the Bears figuring something out. And then like I said, only watched the first half. That's because I headed out to the Broncos Packers game, which was a fun game in the second half. First half, not so much. Packers scored 0 points, but my main takeaways were just how many Packers fans were in that building. I'm not sure if it was audible on TV, and especially the section where I was sitting in, it just felt like it was like the Packers kind of side of the stadium. But Packers fans definitely travel, and Jordan Love throws a pretty ball, but does not complete the like. It's like when it leaves his hand, you're like, oh, that looks like it looks like a very nicely thrown ball, and then it goes 5 yards out of bounds, and Christian Watson's like, come on, guy, like can throw me a catchable pass, and then another takeaway, and this is obviously not breaking news, but like there was several plays there where Russ spun out of pressure, started curling off to the side and had tons of room to run, but would not run. And I feel like Russell Wilson from 5-6 years ago would have ran for 15 yards on those plays, but he's just too nervous to run. I'm not sure if he has lost a step or scared to get hit, but that was a noticeable thing where he just is not. He can still be slightly evasive in the pocket, but he's not taking off those runs. And I always remember him just having those back-breaking third down conversions, when he would scramble for 12 yards and get the third down. So, those were my takeaways.
Yeah, that team stinks. Broncos are horrendous. To me, that's the worst team in the league, I think.
Broncos won, though. I mean, when the Packers took the lead 17-16 with like a minute and change left, you probably thought to yourself, okay, like, yep, no way Broncos are coming back. Like, this is how the Broncos the last two seasons have gone. They're going to lose this game, but then they went right down the field and kicked the game-winning field goal. So, but to your earlier point, I also was high on the Packers entering this year, and they just don't. They just have not put it together. It seems like. So that is the wrap up for NFL Week 7, and then before we get into stake or swap, it is that time of the show for Luke Learns, where we'll talk we'll talk a little trivia. So earlier we were talking about the Eagles, and a lot has been made about Jalen Hurts' turnovers this season. Last year he had 8 total, but through 7 games this season he already has 10 turnovers. 10 turnovers is second most in the NFL right now. Who has the most turnovers right now in the NFL?
Josh Allen?
That is not correct. The player with the most turnovers is Desmond Ridder with 11.
Yeah. A lot of video of Arthur Smith just losing his mind on the sideline.
2 Sundays ago, I thought Arthur Smith, he was contemplating doing some very violent things when Ridder could not. But, I also saw people were like, hey, look, man, like that's you as the play caller, and, bench him if you're that frustrated. So, but yeah, NFC South.
Sorry to interrupt you. Arthur Smith is the FedEx founder's son.
Yes.
Yeah. Fun fact.
Yeah, I learned about that when he was the OC of the Titans before he became head coach of the Falcons, and when the Titans were, beat the Patriots, to basically retire, to kick Tom Brady out of New England. I was hearing stories about that, and it's crazy. I mean, the man probably does not have to work a day in his life, but yeah, he has grinded his way up the NFL chain, just grinding away in film room. So cool story. But a couple more cool stories coming up in stake or swap. First up, we will be talking a little NBA action. The season tips off this week. Of course, I'm in Denver, where the defending champions opened up with a nice win against the Lakers. But we'll be talking about another Western Conference team right now, the Sacramento Kings, currently 55-1 at DraftKings. Luke, we'll start with you first. Are you staking or swapping the Sacramento Kings?
Yeah, I am going to stake the Sacramento Kings. We like long shots around here. They are 55-1 at DraftKings to win the NBA Finals, and they were, in my opinion, super close. Of course, they took the Warriors to 7 games, super close to knocking off the Warriors last season in the playoffs. And I just feel like they can get close again. Of course, Damian Lillard goes to Milwaukee. He's not in the West anymore. Not that the Trailblazers were much of a threat, but don't have to deal with him. Kevin Huerter can hoop. De'Aaron Fox is super good. Sabonis is incredible. He's still super young. He's 27. Domantas Sabonis is, but he's got plenty of tire left. De'Aaron Fox is 25. So I just feel like this team, given the value, and as with all things on PropSwap, not necessarily saying this team's going to beat out the Suns or the Warriors in the NBA final, the Western Conference Finals, and they can make a run. Odds go down to 10-1. You sell it for 5 or 6x what you paid preseason.
I am going to swap the Kings. Last year, they had like a historically good run of injury luck. Like their starting 5 played like an incredible amount of games together. And it's just one of those things that I feel like it could regress back to the mean. And I just don't see them going to get that lucky again with the injuries. Also, I don't think people are going to overlook them as much like they did last year. And, I think the Western Conference is better this year than they were last year. Obviously, full season with of KD on the Suns. Mm-hmm. The Lakers obviously made some great moves at the trade deadline last year. And then I like. So there are a couple other teams in that same range in the West that I like. The Timberwolves at 55-1. I think Anthony Edwards. He played incredible in the World Cup over the summer. And then the Oklahoma City Thunder. Watch out for them because they are loaded with talent. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was like a first-team All-NBA. Chet Holmgren, which everyone kind of forgot about, he's going to be making his debut. And then they've got a kid named Josh Giddey. They've got this guy Jalen Williams. They are loaded with talent, and so they are Thunder 70-1 right now at FanDuel.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
If I'm going to pick a kind of long shot in the West, it's going to be Thunder, T-Wolves, and then maybe even the Pelicans. But I mean, there's just a huge question mark on Zion there. But for those reasons, I think the injury thing could catch up to them. So I'm swapping the Kings. Next up, we're going to go back to baseball. It's time to make our predictions. But without making a prediction, we'll talk a little World Series MVP. This is just like in the NFL, this is a great way in NBA to find value on the team you like by picking, one of their players. So we'll be talking Corey Seager to win World Series MVP, currently 5-1, which is the favorite, mind you. But he's still 5-1. I will go first. I am staking Corey Seager to win World Series MVP. As you can guess, I like the Rangers to win this series. A position player has won it 7 of the last 8 years. Seager himself won it in 2020 with the Dodgers. So little history there with him stepping up in big moments. And he's been stepping up this entire postseason. In the playoffs, Seager is leading the team with a 483 on base percentage and a 330 batting average. Small sample size, but in 2 games versus the D-backs this year, Seager had a 400 on base percentage. And then, we talked about Adolis Garcia earlier in the podcast. He was a machine in the ALCS, but I just don't think he can keep that same momentum. The D-backs did a really good job of not giving up a ton of home runs to the Phillies, at least in the last 5 games.
Besides Schwarber, yeah.
Yeah, but games 3 through 7, I thought that they did I guess maybe there was games 3 through 7, they did a really nice job of not letting the Phillies go wild on the home run. So I'm looking for a guy like Seager who can make more contact, run the bases, play great defense. And then again, like I said, Seager is the favorite at 5-1. You compare that to like the NBA Finals. Jokic was like minus money before the series to win MVP. In the NFL Super Bowl, it's always the quarterbacks that are one of the 2 quarterbacks is probably going to win it. So to get the favorite at 5-1 here, I think is pretty good value. So I am staking Corey Seager to win MVP.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the odds list. Top for the D-backs is Kettle Marte, and I love that you pronounce it Kettle or Kettle, but they're calling him like the clutch D-backs player. So I'll swap Seager at 5-1, and I'd be staking Marte. This will lead into my World Series pick. So he's, to me, it's his award to lose, of course, assuming the D-backs win. So he's just the face of the franchise. Every time he's up to bat, it seems like the announcers and the whole team is like on the edge of their seats. Like he's just so dialed in. He's the D-backs version of Garcia in terms of like totally just turning it up the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, look, Marte was 39-1 to win NLCS MVP when they were down 2-0. I don't have it in front of me, but Garcia was also like in the 20s to win ALCS MVP. So, there's definitely value to be found going deeper down the odds board and even during the series as well.
Seriously, don't even bet the World Series. Just pick a couple MVPs. You get way more for your money.
Yeah, no, totally. And look, and I just think the way baseballs play with keeping these pitchers on short leashes, it's going to be a position player. I mean, these guys don't pitch. These starters don't pitch more than 6 innings, like if that. Strasburg won it, but then before that, after, like I said, like more than 8 years ago was Bumgarner, who was an absolute machine, but they don't put pitchers out there like there. So definitely be looking at World Series MVP position players. But so your pick is the Diamondbacks?
Yes.
All right. Well, so Luke's going with the Diamondbacks. I'm going with the Rangers. Maybe we'll put a friendly wager offline on it. So there you have it. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. Please make sure to subscribe, leave a rating, and we will talk to you next week.